You can hear the drum beats as he marches toward you. Akuma is on his way to Street Fighter 6. That is the hot news right now. May 22nd is when he joins the cast, and the thing on everybody's mind is, of course, is he going to be the absolute best in the game? He has done that kind of a thing many times in the past. Not every time, but many times in the past. And we've seen a handful of gameplay footage from him. We've seen people that have actually been able to play him give us their responses and what they think. People like Justin Wong, Sajam, Rufomonger, Tyrant, and more. So today we're going to talk about how ridiculously strong he obviously looks, but then also if there's any way that Capcom is going to be balancing him so that he doesn't just take over Street Fighter 6. And to have this conversation, I'm bringing on Steven Dream King Chavez. We'll fix that later in post. I'll edit that out. Steven Dream King Chavez, all the way from the other side of the world, a New Zealander now. How's it going, Steven?
Well, living in Australia now, actually, but close enough. I'm doing pretty well.
And then they have the equally big spiders is the point, is the thing that everybody's thinking about, so.
Yes. Had my first run-in with Australian spiders this morning, actually, and
the only thing more terrifying than Akuma.
That's exactly where I was going with it. I'm talking about something today that is equally as terrifying as Australian spiders, and that is Akuma and how unbelievably broken he already looks. I don't think I've seen anybody in the FGC say this character doesn't look absolutely busted, but we're here to be the Mythbusters and see if we can figure out if he's actually going to be somewhat regulated this time. 35 years of history says no, but we're going to try to deconstruct this and figure out, is there any way Capcom could actually regulate this character? And as John said, not make him completely dominant and completely take over the entire game.
Yep, that's the idea here. So first, I do want to go down the list of some of the things that I've seen or heard that go onto the side of, no, he's going to be absolutely disgustingly broken, which is simultaneously terrifying and exciting because I think most of us are like, well, we're going to play some Akuma for sure. But I worry that, of course, if he's too broken, then the whole game, he becomes a black hole of attention and every other or more opponent is going to be Akuma, and it's going to be all about, can you beat Akuma? And it's going to be Akuma Fighter 6, and it's like, I don't know. And then you start to get into discussions about paying to win because he's a DLC character, and it could go badly, is what I'm saying. So let's go down the list of some of the things that he has that are making him extra terrifying right now. And I'll start with some normals. Watching Sajam, and you guys know Sajam, he's a pretty authoritative source. He knows what he's talking about, and this is still early impressions, but we take that as you will. He says that Akuma's crouching medium punch is just like Luke's. It's like he's basically got Luke's crouching medium punch, but we'll do you one better. It combos into itself without counter hit. So that's the Street Fighter 5 right there. You remember medium ends into medium? That's coming back at least with Akuma. Okay, and then his standing heavy punch, Sajam says, is not only better than Ken/Ryu's, it's the best button he's ever pressed in the game. And maybe the best button he's ever pressed in the game. Okay, then you got standing roundhouse, which is a tad technical because it only really hits when they're standing, but when it does, it leads into huge combos. And there's another thing, he's just a freestyle combo machine is what it sort of feels like. Maybe not that bad, but if you can dream it, you can do it with Akuma's combos. And
you forgot to mention, standing heavy kick is also advantageous on block.
That's what I was going to get to. If you block it standing, while he's up in your face and he's got total advantage over you. He is a crouching medium kick into drive rush character. You guys remember those from season 1? Well, Akuma's one of those guys on top of everything else that we're going on about right now. And here's the thing. All of those moves, and we've seen his standing medium kick, his lights and such, those are definitely there too, and definitely resources for him to play in the neutral. But here's the thing, not only does he have really good versions of all these moves, maybe the best in the game, well, that remains to be seen, but the fact that, and this doesn't get talked about enough, Akuma has always and does in this game have really fast walk speed, and that is the thing that ties all of your neutral tools together and makes you all the more effective. It lets you position yourself either to get out of danger or to be there in time to whiff punish or whatever it is you want to do. So not only, and that plus the fact that you're not using these things in a vacuum. You might be a little bit worried about crouching medium kick, only enough for him to come up and hit you with a standing heavy punch, or vice versa. He can use these all with each other, so it's more than the sum of the parts. You gotta keep that in mind when you're talking about Akuma, when you're talking about neutral and footsies, and when you have the walk speed, that ties everything together and multiplies things together. Did you have anything you wanted to say on footsies and such?
Yeah, his walk speed also helps him, it gives him throw loops as well, which is, of course, we know what throw loops are in this game and how dangerous they are. It also allows him to shimmy better, which is another terrifying tactic that he's definitely going to be doing to you. Yeah, he's got some pretty wild buttons, and I think Capcom described him as basically his moves are easy to use and really strong, and he has like some of the fastest walk speed in the game, and they've done this by design. And again, we're going to get into some of the ways that they may have balanced that, but up front they said his moves are easy to use and they're really strong, and he's got a lot of them. He's got a ton of special moves, and we could probably talk a little bit about that now, and damage as well.
Okay, so how about Fireball? It's very fast, which at first I'm like, well, good, because I don't want him following fireballs in with Drive Rush, and it doesn't look like he's going to be doing that with his horizontal fireball, where he can charge it up. And get this, one of the things about it is, yes, it's fast and such, but you charge it up by holding it. So all of his fireballs, his 1-hit, 2-hit, or 3-hit, the red fireball, they all look the same to begin with, because they are. But you see a character from full screen away start charging up a fireball, what do? You usually jump over it. Well, guess what? If you time the jump to jump over the fireball as though he just released it, and he holds on to it, guess who's getting anti-aired with the 2 or 3 hit fireball that's coming out later? That's a little matter-of-fact mix-up that comes just from his fireball. But you remember, Raptor, earlier you just said it's in his horizontal fireball that he can't follow in with Drive Rush. Yes, but he has air fireball, which by itself has always been a ridiculous tool. The downward angle hitbox without a hurt box in a 2-dimensional fighting game is matter of fact going to be really strong. It not only can pick up a lot of combos, it puts you in block stun, where he can basically get in on you, and if you block it or regular parry it, he is often already plus and going to be close to, if not up in your face. He can do it only on jumping forward unless he uses the EX version, and then he can do it from neutral jump. And this is the move that he can throw in the air and then Drive Rush behind. It's worse than the horizontal ones that we've been experiencing with Chun-Li and Juri and Ken and the like. This one is coming down at an angle, and if it hits you, it's combos. If it doesn't, well, Akuma's in your face with the Drive Rush enhanced normals to mess you up.
And I believe it was the Sajam that said that OD Air Fireball into Drive Rush is really, really good. That was one of the tactics he pointed out as, like, this is a really good... Again, we expected it to be, but he confirmed it is, in the build that he played, that tactic is very, very strong. It's going to be scary to deal with, for sure.
It is, matter of fact, half of your drive gauge, if you're Akuma, to do that.
It's true.
But we've also seen what half of your drive gauge to do stuff like this looks like with the likes of Ken, and it's often worth doing. So then you got, what else do we have? Air Fireball is plus at surprising ranges, can pick up combos, maybe even better than in Street Fighter V. You guys remember the hell that was trying to deal with Akuma's lingering fireballs, and if it touched you from anywhere, you could pick up the combo? Well, now it's that, plus he's got Drive Rush. So, if you're a little farther out, I'll just Drive Rush in and continue the combo. And then Demon Flip.
If that's...
Oh, yeah?
That's where I was going.
Yeah.
I was going to say, if that's not scary enough, he's got Demon Flip, and that has, I believe, 5-ish different follow-ups. He has a fake out with it. I believe the palm is an overhead and plus on block. His dive kick, you can combo if you hit it from the right range. He's got some wild stuff. I think the only thing he doesn't have out of the Demon Flip now is the throw. But he's got a lot out of that now, and he can do OD Air Fireball and OD Tatsu in the air after Demon Flip as well. Because why not? And I think there's combos that use all that as well, like that incorporate that with some juggles, and Demon Flip is also looking very, very scary at the minute.
Absolutely. And it is cool to see that they didn't give him the throw as well. In a game where you're going to be using parry, which puts you into that punish counter state from the throw, at least you know, all right, I'm not going to have to deal with that part of the rock, paper, scissors mix-up that he gets just from attacking from the air. But man, the way I see this is yes, it's used in combos, but it's also... You know what it's like fighting Cammy with her dive kicks and such, and how even though you know the things that she can do, when she goes into the air, she's not just doing a regular jump a lot of the times. And Akuma also has a dive kick out of his regular jump. That's going to mess with timing. So far, he's got amazing, maybe the matter-of-fact best neutral in the game. Neutral skips via drive rush. If he doesn't feel like playing neutral, he can throw an air fireball and go in with the drive rush. And then also, if he wants to attack you from the air, it's a mix-up in and of itself, because as we see, the way his Demon Flip moves and the fact that he can cancel it early, it's like, are you going to be ready to stop all of that? No. And so between all of these things, you can already feel the mental stack building. And this is just all of his maneuvers. It's like there's also drive impact. There's also raw drive rush. And it's like you're not going to be ready for Akuma in the neutral game as he approaches.
Yes. Now, John, you're saying all of these things that he has, obviously some great tools to open up the opponent, but you're about to say all of that is too good offensively, and of course Capcom gave him very low damage, right? He has low damage output because he has such great tools in offense, right?
Nope.
That's what you're about to say.
No, that's not what I'm going to say at all, baby. This guy doles out the damage in spades like he always has. A lot of his super, his level 2 super, for instance, is a combo. You can combo into, I think, all of his supers, right? Including Raging Demon, which is not invincible. So there's that. There's that. He's not invincible. But man, yeah. So he's gonna hit you as hard as anybody else. Maybe not quite as hard as Marissa, but hot damn, I'm seeing a lot in the way of corner carry. Naturally, his bread and butter into the Tatsu, into the sweep. You can do it into the DP, but you have to be close enough and it can whiff. It's a lot better, I think, in most situations, unless you're going for the kill, to go for that sweep. That sweep does knock you back a little bit, and I thought, oh, they're trying to nerf that a little bit from how it's been before, because now he won't get as much Oki, but that knockdown is hard, I think. No, I mean, you can back roll, but he double dashes forward after that is what we're seeing people do. And it's like, I think he could also choose to safe jump afterwards. Point is, not only is that a whole bunch of horizontal movement toward that corner, but he's also going to get Oki off of it in probably a couple of different ways. It's like, where are the holes in the game? We're going to keep going. Maybe it's in his new special move, I don't remember what it's called off the top of my head, but the lava punch, right? Like this move, we don't know a lot about it.
Flame or something like that. I think it's something like that. I remember looking at the move list.
I like lava punch.
The lava punch is what we're calling it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so here's the thing that happens with Akuma time and time again, because he comes back in virtually every Street Fighter game and sometimes in Tekken games too, but he has his old tools. He's got the air fireball. He's got the demon flip. He's got whatever his Tatsus and everything. And Capcom will tend to regulate those a little bit, at least, from how they used to be. Back in Street Fighter 4, he could jump backwards and do a regular air fireball. So there was that too, right? So then it's like, okay, he can only do it jumping forwards, and then neutral will give it to him, but you have to spend meter. It's like, that's a little bit. And that was in Street Fighter 5, so it hasn't really been adjusted since. But then they also have to give him a new move or two. And we see that here in the lava punch. It's hard to gauge how good or not this is going to be, but man, this is a combo extender, and I think it feeds into what you were talking about with his damage output, because you can make it so that you bounce off the wall. Versions of it are safe on block. It's actually a 2-part move, right? So he has to input the initial part, and then it's like safe if he doesn't do the second part. So there's a little bit of technicality there with him, making the decisions and seeing if he's hit or not, and what he wants to do. But point is, options for days with this character, whether it's on the ground, whether he's in the air, whether you're in the air. It's like, it doesn't matter. Akuma always has a bunch of options, and they're really good, and they feed off of each other.
Yes, and I think we mentioned it earlier in during this episode here, but also I believe it was Rufumonger that mentioned that his combo ability is, he basically has freeform combos where if you think it could likely work. Everything combos into everything, right. So you can kind of convert and do whatever you want with crazy juggles, and combo all these different moves into each other, and like you said, get some crazy corner carry, get some crazy damage. He's got, on paper, he's got everything and probably a lot more, and that is terrifying.
Yes, and within this atmosphere of Street Fighter 6, I only see it benefiting him more with things like Drive Rush to enhance the things that Akuma's already good at, and we've sort of already addressed that. But what did I miss? What else does he have that's really good that I haven't listed yet?
Let's see. He's got a command grab. We don't know how good that is yet, but they gave him a command grab because, sure, Akuma with a command grab. But I think that's been a joke and a meme for a long time. But they just went, yeah, that's probably a good idea. We'll do that. We like that. So he's got a command grab too. What else does he have? Well, he also, as we mentioned before, he does have Raging Demon, which is separate from his regular level 3. So he's actually got an extra super that is also very powerful that you can also combo into.
Combo
like
into Demon?
Before.
It's not invincible.
So he's got it's not invincible. So we're gonna get into the drawbacks of this character, potential drawbacks anyway. But yes, it's not invincible. It only has projectile invincibility, as far as I know. So there are things that, you know, Capcom is trying to implement to potentially regulate this character, and actually, well, it's a perfect transition into, let's start talking about what is Capcom doing to try to make this character even remotely fair, because, again, I don't think anybody in the FGC saw that trailer and went, yeah, that looks pretty fair, I think that's going to be okay. Everybody I saw was saying this character is completely broken, instant #1, there's going to be Akumas everywhere for months and months, which is absolutely right. So what has Capcom done? What have we seen that Capcom has done to even remotely try to balance this character? John, what are you seeing on that front?
The most obvious thing, and this is always the case with Akuma, is that he has notably less health than everybody else. If everybody has 10,000, with the exception of Marissa and Zangief, who both have a little bit more. Does Honda have a little bit more too? He might. But everybody has at least 10,000. Akuma has 9, and that's not nothing. Like, that is significant. This guy dies when he gets hit. If there are 2 hit kills, there definitely Akuma has those, and maybe he's got like 1.5 hit kills. So, but here's the history: is that they've always done this. They've always given Akuma very high utility. They give him everything that he needs on offense, on defense, on damage output, on corner carry. And he can mix you up. He gets the Oki. He gets all these things, but they try to balance that out with one big main weight on the other side of the scales, and that is less life, less health, and usually less stun. But that's not going to be the case in this game, because stun is tied to you get drive impacted in the corner when you're burned out. So 9,000 health. What do you think about 9,000 health? I, for one, do not think it's going to be nearly enough to balance this out. I mean, outside of a new player, but when Tokido gets, someone like Tokido gets Akuma and learns all this stuff with them, the fact that he has 9,000 health, it's going to be something. I don't think it's going to be enough, but what do you think?
Traditionally, out of the 35 years of Street Fighter, we've seen that Capcom usually tries to make that as you said, it's the main tool to balance this character out. He is the epitome of the glass cannon, right? He has everything offensively. He has tons of damage, but he bleeds a lot. In past games, I mean, it's always been a thing, but I don't think usually people feel that that's enough to balance him. I mean, the tier lists from these Street Fighter games from over the years say otherwise, right? He's always either top tier or high tier. So the health thing is definitely a thing. But it's never like that completely regulated him, and now he's fair. He's usually always still up on the tier list, really high up, and up on the popularity list. People play this character, so it has an impact, but it's usually not enough to make him, like, fully regulated, and, like, he's always really good despite having low health, right?
Yeah.
Here in Street Fighter 6, though, I am very curious about it, because there's a lot going on in this game. I mean, we've seen so many Twitter clips and complaints about the 2-touch scenarios, right, and the checkmate scenarios, and all of these things, and using 4 resources to kill somebody in 2 openings, essentially. Doing some tests with 9,000 health in the lab myself. You can definitely get there a lot quicker than needing to use full resources. Obviously, character dependent. What character you pick is going to decide how many resources you need. But you're going to be getting to that 2-touch quicker with Akuma than anybody else, and that's a fact. And in this game where, you know, one crouching medium kick into drive rush could mean that 50% health, 50% of your health is now gone, for Akuma, that is going to be significant, I think. Is it going to be enough to balance him? I don't know. But I will say that I think the damage output and his low health are going to be more significant in this game, and more it's going to be more tied to his balance, I think, than we've seen in past games, just because of the nature of this game right now, assuming that Capcom doesn't do some sweeping damage reduction stuff in season 2 here, because we don't know the full details yet, right?
Yeah.
But I do think it's gonna contribute something more than maybe we've seen in the past, but in and of itself, I don't think that's gonna balance him fully. But I do think of things like Zangief's OD SPD as a punish counter, which does like 3,900 damage, and that's like a huge chunk of damage for Akuma. I mean, 2 SPDs and he's gonna be almost completely dead.
I'm thinking about Manon's buffed metal system, where now she's doing even more damage. Doesn't it affect her critical art or her level 3 now?
It's gonna affect her level 3. Yep, for season 2. That's right. It's gonna get increased damage, and it's like, so that's the big thing. And I will say Capcom has specifically mentioned that as well, where they're saying that, you know, Akuma has all of this stuff, but you need to have very quick reactions and be precise playing this character, because if you make a mistake, it's gonna hurt.
Yeah.
And I believe that's true. So I'm curious, because again, in this game with such explosive damage and the ability to belt it out from a single, you know, normal conversion, like, that could end up being very, very significant here. Again, do I think it's gonna fully balance him? No, but it might be pretty darn important this time around. And man, just thinking of Akuma whiffing a DP and then Zangief punish countering him with SPD, it's like, that's it. That's all it takes, dude. And that could completely turn the match around just from that. So it's interesting. I'm curious to see how this plays out, but it has a lot of potential to maybe balance him further than we kind of expect right now.
And this is also going to be a, well, at least in theory, more defensive season of Street Fighter 6 because they have buffed drive reversal. So you think about situations where Akuma would DP and it wouldn't work, would most likely be on wake-up situations, but he has another option there when he gets in, because that's going to be the same day that we get wake-up drive reversal, and drive reversal is buffed in how it's not as negative anymore, and so it's like, there's a little something for him too on the defense. Now, they also got rid of the invincibility of his teleport, which I think is super important, because they needed to give him his move, I guess, because he's always had it, sure. But in its worst iterations, and by that I mean its best, it's kind of like a get out of jail free card in a lot of ways, because of how far it would move, and it'd be invincible the whole time. It's like, oh, you got me into the corner, teleport out, let's start playing neutral again. That's not going to be the case anymore. He doesn't have invincibility on it at all, but they did give him, like you were saying, that command grab, and this is actually in my list of drawbacks for him that might be balancing him out a little bit, in that well, from the people that have played it so far, it's fun, it's cool, the command grab from the teleport, but you can't quite see where it would fit into his gameplay. Like maybe some goofy, weird mix-ups, or maybe, you knock him down. You know how Blanca crosses you up, because it does pass through you. Maybe he does some weird situational okie things, but I mean, it's like, yeah, get the command grab, but also if you have the time to do that, you probably want to land something even stronger. So I don't know where this lands, and that's okay, because he has plenty of other stuff, and I think this is just a matter of, we need to keep the move in there, and we'll make it nicer with something. We'll give him the command grab, but really it's not going to be all that useful. What do you think about the teleport command grab situation?
The teleport not having invincibility is a pretty massive nerf for his toolkit. As you were saying, traditionally that move is meant to be I'm in the corner, I'm knocked down, I'm going to do teleport out, and I'm going to get out to safety, and now we're returning to neutral. And a lot of times in those games, it was like, when you're pressuring Akuma, when he's knocked down in the corner, you have to consider that, and sometimes you give him space, because you're like, well, I want to bait that teleport out and punish it when he recovers, but you have to consider that, and it changes the way that you pressure him. But in this game, that's not a thing, which is great, because that would be way too strong. But that is a pretty significant nerf to his toolkit. As far as what it's for, doing some theory crafting, I mean, I have to I haven't seen if it's like if you can cancel into it from a normal. So maybe there's.
I believe
some,
they said you can't.
do that,
I think they said you can't.
You can't. Oh, if you can't, then maybe you could like tick throw with it, kind of thing, like when you're point blank, just so that maybe they think a fireball's coming or something, and you can just kind of surprise somebody, or they're too scared to hit a button because you're Akuma and you're pressuring them. Maybe it's meant to be just a kind of an up close, quick, bait kind of, or like a distraction into command throw type of thing. But even then, that doesn't sound super consistent. It's going to be pretty gimmicky, I think.
Not when you have other options for damage in those same situations, right? So
it's going to be I'm going to throw this in here to win a round because you've never seen it before and you would never think it's coming, and here it is, kind of thing. But I don't see that as like a consistently strong tactic he's going to have. I think the way they've showed it utilized was like he used it to make like a DP whiff, and then he teleported back in and got the command grab, and it's like, sure, but
it wasn't even to make a DP whiff, right? Because it doesn't have the it doesn't. Well, no,
like it was like spaced. It was spaced enough so that he was just moving back when the DP came out.
So
like,
it wasn't that it went
he's not
through
in the
him.
way of it.
Yeah, just missed.
Yeah, no, it didn't go through. It's just kind of like gave enough space and then used it preemptively, and then they DP'd. So he like got out of the way of it just because he wasn't there. But it's like there was no invincibility to it. So it's like it seems very gimmicky. And the best probably application of it was what you were saying of like kind of this weird. He's passed through you, but you've performed an attack already, and you're doing it the opposite way because of the way that the boxes kind of collide there, and you're on the other side now, and your opponent's whiffing a normal facing the other way, and then he gets the command grab. It's like, okay, sure, like how often are you gonna properly time that and make that work out in your favor? Like, and the risk of doing that, if you don't time that right, you're gonna get punished really hard. It seems weird. We're gonna have to see it in action and get our hands on it ourselves, because I'm not really sure what the deal was there. It might just be the case of, like you said, he needs to have the move because he's Akuma, but they obviously can't give it invincibility because that would be way too strong in this game. So they just kind of went, all right, we'll throw a command grab on the end of it and call it a day. But there's probably some application we don't know about yet, but right now it seems like it's a little bit more for show and not really much of a useful technique.
So one of our weights on this side of the maybe he'll be balanced scale is he's got all the guns that he normally has and they look great, and then he's got one great new gun with a lava punch, but maybe he doesn't have two great new guns. Okay, and then another big one here for me is there's a certain amount of technicality. Now, not in his combo execution, it doesn't look like. We've addressed that already. But in the fact that he has to identify if you're standing versus crouching when he hits you. And if he doesn't, or if he goes for that DP when he does his bread and butter and it whiffs. So like we just talked about how terrible it would be for him to whiff a DP ever. And he'll leave himself open if he doesn't pay attention to these kinds of things, because when he does it's primarily in the standing roundhouse, which looks really good. But if you block it, what is it that if you're crouching, it whiffs completely, and if you block it high, don't you still have to block it low at that point? Like I feel like it's only in certain situations where it's ever going to be whiffing, and it's like it's on Akuma players to figure that out, and you could be punished heavily if you don't. But also, it's like all of this has been basically like when you give a character glass cannon qualities, it's usually up to the player to cover their weaknesses, but they can, especially high level players. And so you do that, and it's not like you start out with that weakness that they can exploit. You kind of have to get that first hit. You have to get that first hit on Tokido's Akuma. So as opposed to Tokido's Akuma has to like jump through a hoop or two before he can start doing what he wants to do. It's like, nah, it's kind of in the player's hands. And I feel like this feeds into that too. So yes, again, lower level or greener players are going to have a hard time with this kind of a thing. But I think this is something that you can overcome with just a little bit of experience with the character. But what do you think about the technicality in these ways?
Yeah, having to be aware of standing and crouching opponents is definitely a thing. It's definitely something that's tougher to do. I don't think that's going to be something that's easily accessible for newer players or lower ranked players and things like that. That's going to be definitely something, because you're going to have people trying to do stuff and trying to combo into Tatsu, and it's just not going to work because they're not aware of the crouching and standing stuff. Being aware of that is definitely a technical aspect of this. I want to double check how his standing heavy kick works. I think it's the case that if you're blocking it standing, you can you take both of the hits and he's plus on block. I think if you crouch it though, the first hit gets blocked and then the second whiffs.
Yes.
I think that's how it works. And if that's the case, then he gets completely destroyed at that point. So we'll have to double check that. I want to clarify. I'm not 100% certain on that. But if that's the case, then that is a pretty big, like, hey, you need to be aware up front that you're, if they're standing or crouching, if you hit that button. And Ed had something similar in his standing heavy kick where it was like one of his only plus on block normals, but completely whiffed against crouchers, right? So you have to be aware, and there's times where you go for it and they happen to be crouching, and you just didn't think of it. You're like, oh, I want the plus frames, and they were crouching, and it completely whiffs, and you go, damn it, I didn't even think.
Punish counter to
Akuma
the balls with your leg up in the air.
Yeah.
Like, that probably does even more than regular punish counter damage just on principle, right? Maybe it's one hit KO at that point, because, I mean, with the leg up in the air like that,
sure.
So he will die. He will die very quickly, and especially against Marissa. But
it's definitely a thing. Yeah, it's interesting. It's again, the way that it was painted, that from what I saw and what I've seen so far, it seems like it's basically if Akuma gets that and it's blocked standing, it's his game all day. But if you crouch it, it's your game. You get it back. So that seems like a pretty interesting risk and reward for a normal like that. A traditionally very strong normal, because he's had that normal in the past as well, and it's always been a major part of his toolkit. But yeah, and these are the little things that I think Capcom is doing to try to regulate him some more, because again, it's like he needs to have all of these tools, because that's pretty much the essence of Akuma, right? Like, that is what this character is. He has so many options. He was the original secret boss character. Like, he was overpowered from the start. Like, you need to do that to keep his identity. So the way that you could potentially regulate him is that you kind of go in with precision and you really try to look at what these tools do and affect their frame data, change their frame data to make them not as crazy, or change what their behavior a little bit so that it's not as bad. And speaking of that, we also learned that his air fireball, if he's hit when he throws it out, the air fireball disappears, which is a big thing as well, because in the past he could jump in, throw an air fireball, you anti-air him, but the fireball still comes down, hits you, and he still gets a full combo because he's been air reset. That shouldn't be a thing anymore. I don't know if it works the same with OD Fireball. That might bypass that, but I've seen that regular air Fireball disappears if it gets hit, and that's a big difference as well, because you look at characters like JP, where spikes still come out if he's hit, right? If I'm not mistaken. The portal spikes, right? I believe that's the case.
No, he loses the portal if he gets hit, unless that's already on its way out when you hit him. But if you hit him, his portals go away. Same thing with his level 2.
Right. OD Amnesia is what I'm thinking of.
The explosions, yes.
The explosions still follow you and still come out, and there's times where you do hit him, but he recovers fast enough to still combo you anyway. And we're not going to be seeing that with Akuma's regular air fireball. Again, OD, I'm not sure if that's the case, but if at the very least we're not going to have he just gets to jump forward and air fireball every time, and even if you anti-air him, he still converts to a full combo, and you're at the disadvantage. That is another, again, that's something that's more of a subtle nerf, but it's a pretty important one, I think, because it's something that Akuma has traditionally been able to do, and you just have to hold it. You go, well, I need to EXDP him or something to get him out of the air and bypass the fireball, and if I don't have an EXDP with invincibility, guess what? I'm holding that mix-up all day, and he just gets to dominate. And so we shouldn't be seeing that in this game that much, which is great. And I think that is a pretty important change to how his air fireballs work. Again, this feels like what Capcom is doing. They're kind of going in there with a fine-tooth comb and going, here are these really strong moves that he has. He's still going to have them, but we're going to tweak the behavior and the frame advantage and the way that they work just a bit to make them more fair. And that we see that with no invincibility on teleport. We see that with no invincibility on Raging Demon, only to fireballs. There's things that they're doing here that are potentially going to contribute to him being actually regulated. Potentially. Doesn't mean he's not going to be top tier, but it might mean that it's not just pay to win. He comes in and he's dominating everything and he's ridiculous, and that's the hope anyway.
Yeah. I wanted to ask, what do you think are the chances with what we've seen thus far that Akuma is the best in the game upon release?
I don't see a scenario where he's not going to be probably top 5 right out of the gate. I mean, again, it could be a case that the damage output really is something that truly affects him, because again, on paper and based on what we've seen from season 1, like, I'm looking at some of those scenarios and going, Akuma getting tagged by that, he's gonna die really fast, which means that if you make, like, to the level of which it's already really rough, if you make a mistake with other characters in Street Fighter 6, it's only gonna affect Akuma even more than that, right? Because you already have those instances of, like, I threw that wrongly timed fireball, got jumped in on, and now I'm in the corner. Now I ate 60% damage from a level 3, and that was brutal. Amplify that with Akuma, because that's what it's going to be, right?
Yes.
And I can see that, and I can go, damn, that might actually do a pretty good job of balancing him out a bit. But if you want to take it from here, I know you've got something to say.
Basically I go, all right, well, in Street Fighter 5, everyone had 1,000 health. He had like 900. Or, well, it was varying. It wasn't quite as consistent, but he had the least health in the game. Mm-hmm. And that was a huge offense-filled game, even back in Season 2. Actually, Season 2 is when they started nerfing some of that stuff, but like, it was still crazy offense. It was the time of the robbery V-triggers and such. And I think about talking about that Akuma before he were to launch. Like, say Street Fighter 5 Akuma was just going to enter the game, and you go, well, maybe the damage output in Street Fighter 5, especially when you consider V-triggers, is just, like, as soon as Akuma gets touched, he's dead with these. And that's true. But what ended up being the final calculus with all of that, it was that Akuma was much more about his ability to be on offense and to manipulate in the neutral than it was that when you hit him, he died. And it was true. You did more damage. You didn't have to hit him as many times. But, to hit Akuma, it's like that's a pretty tall ask, especially when someone knows what's up. And I think that equation equates out to, it's still light years farther. It's still much better for him to have utility and to be in the driver's seat constantly than it is to, like, if you mess up, he's dead. It's like, sure, if you mess up, he's dead, but good luck getting that mess up.
I don't disagree that it's better to have that utility. I think that's a given. But let me throw this at you. In Street Fighter 5, that game was heavily catered towards offense. Mm-hmm. You were encouraged to play offense. Heavy buttons were plus on block. You had crush counters. You had V triggers. You had an instant 50-50 mix-up with V trigger activation stuff. And it had a severe lack of good defensive options, universal defensive options, right? You had things like V-shift that started getting baited out towards the end of the game. You had V-reversal, which could also get baited out pretty heavily. I mean, it worked when you for certain things, but could definitely get baited out. And oftentimes, the best choice was to just sit there and block and hope you can find an opening. And that's what we saw a lot at high-level play. And so, in a game like that, where there's a very severe lack of defensive options and offense is super heavily encouraged, Akuma could bypass the low health, nerf by just going heavier on the offense because it was so encouraged. Street Fighter 6 is a game that, even though people don't want to admit it, really has some pretty darn good defensive options.
Perfect parry.
You've got perfect parry.
Yeah.
Drive reversal's getting better. We're getting a new wake-up drive reversal. There's drive impact for things like his standing heavy kick that'll definitely, that should do a really good job of countering it. So there are ways to shut these things down now, and again, if you're not careful with your offense, you could get perfect parry, you could get drive impacted, you can get hit out of some of these things where normally in some of these past games, that stuff that Akuma's doing to you, you just have to hold it, you can't get out. Now, just by the nature of how the game mechanics are designed, you should have some tools to help you get out of this stuff, especially with things like wake up drive reversal for, characters who don't already have an invincible DP, or an invincible reversal, and they're forced to use super meter. Now they have a new option too. So there's more to this equation than just he's going to be really offensive driven and it's going to be too good. It's like, well, yes, but we do have some mechanics that can potentially shut some of that stuff down. And I think that's also where we're going to see some more balance to this character, just kind of overall. I think that's going to contribute to this whole formula here, because we do have some pretty good defensive mechanics in this game. Again, people will say you don't, but we do. They're totally usable, and it kind of comes down to how you use it and if you've made the right call and stuff like that, which, again, you don't always make the right call, and sometimes you get cracked for going for something, but the fact is there are solutions to these things, and most things in this game have a solution that is there. You just have to know how to use it and when to use it, and I look at those mechanics and I go, there are things that we're going to be able to shut down from Akuma. I think one of the videos was talking about how countering air fireballs was the counter was
drive rush under or air to air. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. Or air to air. Yep, exactly. So there's different things that you can do here that might help us stop his offense a little bit more, and that might ultimately end up being a nerf for him as well, and a way to regulate him. So
yeah, and a big question is how much of his stuff is drive impact cancelable. That has, I mean, we talked about that especially early on in Street Fighter 6's life, of like characters that, like, we would talk about DJ and say one of his drawbacks is that he doesn't have as many drive rush cancelable moves, and so he's more drive rush cancel. Drive impact cancelable moves is what I mean. And so therefore, if you drive impact during his offense, you're more likely to get him than some of the other characters. I mean, but at the same time, as I even just say that, I go, no, he probably has, like, all of his, almost everything he does is probably drive impact cancelable, because that tends to be the way that they incorporate Akuma into games, is like give him the best or some of the best of whatever the mechanic, is. The other thing is perfect parry. I wonder what that's going to look like with his strings. But then perfect parry is instantly scaled by 50%. So all of a sudden the combo you're doing is not as strong and not as palpable. And it's like, it is something, but it's not as life bar melting. And I think that's significant, especially if that sends you back into neutral again. And it's like, oh, well, you gave him a love tap, which is significant to him, but it's maybe not going to kill him. And then you're back into that neutral for your perfect parry. And like, did you get it the next time, or did he get through this time? And I think what that adds up to is that more often than not, it's going to be in his favor.
Well, with perfect parry though, those scaled combo punishes are going to hurt him more just because of his lower health. And again, like you said, it's going to be a love tap, but there's going to be some oomph behind it as well. For him specifically, because his health is lower. But also, people use perfect parry punishes to
position
drive gauge as well.
Yes.
No, to force burnout. And that's another thing here that we haven't talked about, is that Akuma is going to be a heavy meter user. And players are going to be burning that meter so quickly. And once he's in burnout, he's going to lose access to a lot of those strong moves, man. I mean, it's not like he's not going to have the normals and stuff like that, but this character might really, really suffer in burnout. He might be one of those characters that it's like, once he's in burnout, it's almost over for him. And again, obviously he's got strong tools. He'll have supers to help counter that stuff. But imagine Akuma in the corner, no super, and in burnout. And what are his options going to be? His teleport's not invincible. You're going to be able to pressure him all day, and his low health is going to immediately mean, okay, I have pressure for days, and the moment I get an opening, it's pretty much death for him. And that's something that we're also not considering, is that resource management is so important in this game, and this character is going to be encouraged to use all the meter. I would be shocked if Akuma players don't play exactly like Luke players online, where they just burn their meter in the first 10-15 seconds of a round, and then they're burnt out. And it's like, in Luke's case, he can usually hang on long enough sometimes and come back and use all his strong tools again, but you might be able to pressure Akuma and KO him before he could even do that.
Yeah.
And it's a real consideration. It's drive gauge is so important in this game, and being in burnout is a massive hindrance. It's a really difficult situation to be in. So I'm curious to see how Akuma will be able to handle that, because you're telling me people aren't going to go into burnout with this character all the time.
I'm sure they will.
That's what he's going to do,
I'm sure there's going to be a lot of spend half of your total meter in order to approach, and then in the times that doesn't work out, like that might be a situation. Of course, he's going to be heavily nerfed in burnout, as all characters are, but even then, it's like he loses access to the perfect parry, he loses access to the drive impact, and he loses access to his OD moves. but he still has the fleet-footedness. He still has the ability to one, kind of run away while in burnout, but also the all of the demon flip is still there in the regular versions of it, and that in and of itself, like we've said, can be mix-uppy. The fireball is still there and everything, and so it's like I feel like he also has a way of both surviving burnout and like evading or putting pressure on you, or even still going on offense when he's in burnout because of these fundamental tools that he will still have access to. I'm not saying that he's not heavily nerfed there, and I'm not saying that it will be terrible for him, but whether or not that will be enough to kind of start balancing the scales, I'm not so sure. This is actually something that I was considering because, like we were talking about earlier, he always has less vitality. And in this game, it's only health because because of the way stun is tied to burnout in the corner and drive impact. Well, I was thinking maybe when you attack him and you're scraping off bits of drive gauge when he's blocking, that he might take more damage there in his drive gauge. That would be a significant way of balancing him in Street Fighter 6, and I don't think I've heard anybody say that's the case, and I don't think I've noticed. I mean, I haven't noticed that being the case, so I don't think that that's what's going on, but I hold out that might be the way to balance Akuma if he's not when he drops. It's like that might be a matter of doing, because we've seen them manipulate like drive gauge building and such, especially with in the long list of JP nerfs that happened back in the end of February. One of the things was the way that he can try to trip out your drive meter from full screen was nerfed. Like if you parry his spikes and such, it's a wash. It's neutral instead of you losing things on it. And that was in no small part a big deal for him, especially because he's so advantageous when he burns you out. So I think that probably should be something that, if it's not already something on Capcom's radar, that they could use that to specifically balance Street Fighter 6 Akuma. But when it's all said and done, to answer the question that I was posing to you earlier, I like between 70 and 80, so we'll split the difference between 75%. I think that he will be, matter of fact, the best character in the game when he releases. And I think it'll probably be that way for like a couple of years or seasons worth of adjustments. And then maybe once we get to the end, he will finally tweak down to being somewhere like around the top 10, maybe 10-ish. Because that tends to be the path for Akuma. But if you ask me, gun to my head, the Akuma's level 3 to my head, I would say 75% that he will be the absolute best in the game, and it won't even be close with what we've seen so far.
I think he's probably going to be really, really strong right out of the gate, because I think people are going to be taking the time to try to figure out how to counter all of his crazy stuff. And you're going to get a lot of, like you do with any DLC character, you're going to get a lot of just players not knowing what the counters are yet and just being overwhelmed by the offense and seeing these new things in action. But I am very curious to see where he's at, like 2 months, 3 months in, once people really know how to counter that stuff and people start sharing that tech, because there is going to be no shortage of tech on how to counter this character. He is going to overrun the online landscape 100%. Like, I wouldn't doubt, usually when it comes to the DLC characters that are just released, their first month in the game, they're pretty popular, but they're usually not in the highest spots. I feel like Akuma is going to be probably top 3 right away. I can't see a scenario where that online isn't just littered with them every other ranked match. So we're going to see a lot of this character, and we're going to see a lot of counters for him as well. And once people start getting that stuff down, I'm curious how many people are really going to stick with him and go, okay, he's, if he is dying that quickly, and it is a matter of, you made one mistake and you got opened up, and now the match is now no longer in your favor. Now you're at the deficit. Now you're losing.
Half your health's gone, and now there's Oki in the corner and loops up in your face. It's like it might just be those 2 touches, yeah.
And how many people are going to be willing to stick with that? Because you have characters like Luke, who has also gotten some buffs in Season 2, apparently. We know he's gotten some nerfs, but also got some buffs. It's like, are people just going to stick with that because they go, okay, he's still really strong, and he has more health, so I'm not losing that quickly. It's something that I don't know how that's going to play out yet, but I'm very curious to see it in action, because again, if Akuma's really getting affected by this damage output, again, because we don't know if Season 2 is going to have any sweeping, maybe certain things, drive impact stuff scales more or whatever. There might be some new scaling and stuff we don't know yet. But that could be a real thing this time, and I don't know if it'll be the end-all be-all, but I guess I can say it this way, that if there was ever a chance for Akuma to be really good, but also pretty darn fair and more of a regulated character and not be insanely broken, I think it would be in Street Fighter 6 because of the way that the developers have really looked at a lot of these things. And like we said before, it's like there are solutions to almost everything. There are a handful of checkmate scenarios. You gotta slide down a pretty long hill to get there and burn yourself out and make some pretty bad choices to get there, right? Not save meter for round 3 or not save super for Marissa in round 3, right? She's gonna get you in the corner. If she has level 3 and you get burnt out, you should have 1 bar of super to protect yourself, right? If you don't have that, that's probably a mistake you're making right now, right? There are solutions to these things, and so I wonder if they really looked at the solutions for Akuma and really dialed it in. I don't know if they did.
I've thought about that.
If there was ever a chance, it would be in this game.
Because I felt that way, but that feeling has been waning the more the game has been going on. I think they've done a better job of that and thinking about every move, where it goes, and how to counter it. But at the same time...
Well, it's the vanilla version. It would never be perfect from the start. But
it was much better than most other games.
Exactly.
I still think this is the most balanced version of Street Fighter. And I'm not talking like the final versions of other games are not as balanced as the first version of this game. But then also you have things like Rashid's Super 2. You have a 100%. Lot of Luke's crap.
You're always going to have that stuff. You're always going to. And again, it's a vanilla version. In vanilla Street Fighter 4, we had Akuma with roundhouse and standing roundhouse loops into jab. We had, Tiger uppercut into level 1 to Ultra 1 with 50% damage. It's like you had this crazy stuff in all of these games, but Street Fighter 6 feels unique in the sense that there are more solutions to things if you just look for them, whereas there was some stuff in those past games, in the vanilla versions of those past games where you're just like, this is just the reality. We just have to deal with this. There's no solution other than don't get hit by it. And that's, I feel like that's where Street Fighter 6 is a bit different here. But again, it's not perfect by any means. There's definitely broken stuff in this game or stuff that's close to it. But it does feel like the developers really did put more thought into kind of how to deal with things and having a solution ready if you really look for it.
I hope that you're right. Like I said, my faith in that is starting to wane, and like I think especially with Akuma, what keeps popping into my head is like the Manal matchup. Yeah, she could in theory do amazing damage to him if she lands 5 command grabs and then lands her, or maybe 4 command grabs and then lands her critical art. But in reality, like, think about that matchup and maybe a couple of others, but trying to play neutral, like her neutral might be the worst in the game, and like if an Akuma that knows what they're doing, it's like good night. I feel like that matchup and maybe some others are going to be absolutely terrible. I hope I'm wrong, kind of. Maybe not. I'm gonna play Akuma, so but right. I like I say, 75% he's gonna be the best in the game, and then top 5 for sure, man. It's like that. Maybe not, but I would like to know what the people think. What do you guys think in terms of how good will he be? What do you think he's going to be? What % would you give him in terms of being the absolute best in the game out of the gate? I want to know what you guys are feeling after you see all this, after you hear these discussions, and if you will be playing Akuma come May 22nd. Steven, did you have any final thoughts on the character in our impending doom?
Yeah. All things considered, I am very excited for Akuma still. I think he looks great in this game. He's got some really fun looking stuff. Again, it all looks broken, but that makes it look more fun. And it's also nice to finally get Akuma in here because it feels like Akuma's kind of the start of the refresh we need on this game now. I think we've got Akuma in, we've got a new stage. It feels like it's gonna feel like a brand spanking new game. Like we're playing some Street Fighter now, right? We're back in it. We've got a classic, veteran character that everybody loves. Loves as far as his character goes, doesn't love to fight, right? But it feels good to get Akuma back in here and to start like season 2 essentially with him. I know he's part of season 1, but we're getting the season 2 balance changes.
Yeah,
he's gonna breathe some new life into this game and make things pretty interesting. I have my concerns that, like everybody does, if he's gonna be too dominant, but we'll see kind of where it goes. But I'm curious to see how the landscape looks like 3 months in, and once people know the counters and things like, I wonder if his fireball is just going to be like totally susceptible to drive impact, because if he's charging it, unless he gets a full charge, he's not going to get the 3 hits that he needs. I'm curious of things like that, like these different kinds of counters that might potentially affect him. But overall, very excited. His stage looks so sick. I'm really excited for that. I'm going to play him some. Never dropping Lily unless Dudley comes out, but I will definitely be playing some Akuma for a little bit just to see how he does and see what he's all about. But I'm pretty excited for this next big update.
Yeah, me too. I hope you guys are. And thanks so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And we will see you in the next video.
Thanks, y'all.